we shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
The question was, why go to the moon? It's been 5 years since Russia launched Sputnik. It is 1 month before the Cuban Missile Crisis. John F. Kennedy will ask a question that will move a nation to action. He will tell the crowd there that they don't have time to build a space program over a generation. When time matters most, the value of the right questions increases. I want to talk to you today about the value of asking the right questions and why they matter more than ever. Before I do that, I want to tell you why this matters to me. I turned 48 a couple months ago. I'm acutely aware of time. I'm always like, did we just put the Christmas stuff away? This is my wife. She is a police officer for the city of Wyoming. For all of you folks that are from out of town, that is a suburb of Grand Rapids. She has worked on crime ranging from robbery and theft to murder. Wyoming has its very fair share of folks that do not abide by the law. My day-to-day issues pale in comparison to hers. I'm very proud of the impact that she makes. I can assure you, she does not work for the paycheck. This is Alexandria. This is, we call her Alex. Every morning we send 2 pictures to Mom, just because of me and her, because, well, you never know when your last day is going to be. I set up an email address for her and sent her a message about every other week, things we did in that previous week, little love notes. When she's 18, she'll get the username and password. She loves singing, drawing, and Bob the dog. My love for Alex knows no bounds. I'm very intentional about how much time I spend with her and how I spend that time. I treasure hanging out with her and the other kids from the neighborhood at the bus stop and playing floors, lava. Bob is always the lava monster. When I'm with her, your calls and text messages will go unanswered. I don't travel unnecessarily because, well, all the money in the world can't replace prayer time and reading books before bed and morning school preparation. I'd do anything to make more time for April and Alex. And my love for them has forced my brain to ask really hard questions about life. How can I manufacture more time? How can I be a better father and a better husband? What do I truly value? What is my purpose? I became obsessed with asking deep, really good questions on a personal and a professional level. And at some point in time, I saw this phrase, and it really just kind of hit me. And I talk to my team about this often. The quality of the answers you receive relies on the quality of your questions. I want to just hang out there for a moment. The quality of the answers you receive relies on the quality of your questions. I believe that great questions and an inquisitive mind are the keys to becoming a better leader, father, husband, technologist, entrepreneur. I'll give you some examples. When I started C3, 17 years ago, in 2008, I didn't think to myself, how can we sell more stuff? Or I was the sales guy in my previous roles. And I asked myself just, well, what are those core level questions? What are we solving for? And it was always, how can we help clients make better procurement decisions and be less of a sales guy? But the second one was, if I'm going to start this company, how can we be a great company? Not just a company where people want to work every day, they jump out of bed to do it, they couldn't imagine working somewhere else, and just not getting the feeling like you're getting treated like a widget. And I kind of had that feeling when I worked in corporate America. As a leader, how can better questions make you a better leader? Well, I'm going to give you an example. This is Jensen Huang. He is the CEO of NVIDIA. He recently said this: I probably give fewer answers and I ask a lot more questions. It's impossible now for me to go through a day and do nothing but ask questions. Through probing, I help my management team explore ideas that they didn't realize needed to be explored. He's not walking around telling people what all the answers are. He guides them through questions. It is so much more fulfilling. It is so much more satisfying to allow your team to come to the right decisions, the right conclusions, the right answers by asking them questions and allowing them to discover it for themselves versus just telling people. The flip side of that, though, is it takes time, and it takes a lot of patience to do that. Robert Darling. So, round of applause for Robert Darling yesterday. We have got to find another way to use them in the future. He spoke yesterday about his experiences on 9/11, being in that bunker under the White House. And he asked himself 3 questions after that day. And those 3 questions were, what bent, when we're talking about national defense, what broke, and how will we fix it before next time? It wasn't blind rage that he felt. He let his questions be his guide. I think better questions make you a better spouse and a better parent. My role model for being a leader, and even in these roles as a parent and a spouse, comes from my mom. My mom, she has the thick Bronx accent. That's where she grew up. And I just remember coming home from school, and it was just like rapid fire. How was your day? What did you learn today? How was tennis practice? How was gym class? It was just like an assault of the senses, like the minute I came home. But you know what? She never pivoted the conversation back to herself. It was all about me, and she was asking about me. And through that, I felt loved, heard, listened to, understood. That's the kind of leader that I want to be. Never talking about myself and always making it about the other person. She's my role model for that. Better technologist. You know, at least half the sessions here will be about AI. I mean, you can't go anywhere in society these days without talking about some sense of AI. But you know what? I believe that AI will only be as good as the questions you ask of it. If you're asking the wrong questions of it, it will not be of service to you. So it is up to you to figure out what the right questions are to ask of it, and ask it. I think ChatGPT does a pretty terrible job at actually telling you have terrible questions. So, what is the path to asking the right questions? What are the right questions? Well, that's probably a moving target. But I know how we can create fertile ground for creating those great questions. So, I'm going to give you some examples. When you get a job offer at C3, there's a little phrase on it, and it says, "We do not have an open door policy." Let me explain that, because it seems maybe perhaps a little counterintuitive. To me, I see open door policy, and I see something that is weak, and I see it as reactive. I imagine for a moment that boss sitting in his office, and there's a little jar sitting outside of it, and every once in a while someone puts a little piece of guidance into a little shred of paper, a little tip. And then maybe every once in a while someone goes into that jar and takes a look, and who knows if they do something about it or not. At C3, it is your job to ask those hard questions. It's in your job offer. We are telling you that we will only become better if you question everything about who we are and what we do. We make it very apparent in the job offer, and it is talked about in the orientation, that it is incumbent upon you to ask great questions. Great questions aren't accepted at C3, they are expected. There's a big difference between those two. Humility and curiosity. I want to talk about those things as values and as characteristics of people that ask great questions. Who remembers this movie? I love this movie. I love The Matrix. I could watch every single scene of this 100 times over. This movie came out in 1999. Keanu Reeves stars as Neo, who's the central character. And what is he trying to solve? What is the Matrix? That's what the whole movie is about. And you know, he is the action hero, and he has some sweet kung fu moves. But you know what? I watch that movie, and you know what I see? I see humility and curiosity. I see a guy who doesn't have all the answers. He's just walking around trying to figure this whole thing out. He's not going around opining. He's trying to figure out what this thing is all about. I saw this the other day, and it just absolutely stuck out to me. In the first 45 minutes of that film, Neo has 80 lines. 44 of them are questions. 44. I think we'd all be a little bit better off if we showed humility and curiosity like Neo. Environment. One of our core practice areas at C3 is contact center and AI around the contact center. So clients will come to us and say, here's our technology stack, this is how we take care of customers, this is what our competitors are doing, and we'll help them evaluate their stack and the vendors and the technologies to help them come to whatever the thing is that will help them take care of their customers best. And one of the things that we do in this process is we conduct focus groups. And something incredible to me has emerged after having done the hundreds of these focus groups. I want to talk to you about what that thing is. Imagine for a moment, we put 8 people in group A and 8 people in group B. And in group B, we have someone in management or leadership, and over here, it's just these folks. And we ask both sets of people, what are your KPIs? How do you take care of customers? What are the technologies that you use today? And in this group, where there is no management, no leadership, we ask a hard question, and we get real answers. They get super real with us. And those real answers turn into even better questions. And those real answers turn into even better questions. And over here, these folks, well, we never get beyond skin deep because they're worried about getting a rebuke in real time. We can never get to the level of honesty that we need to do our jobs really well. So we do the best we can to exclude management and leadership here. We are creating an environment which creates better answers and better questions. Last one to talk about, framing and sequencing. Imagine for a moment I asked you a question and I framed it in 2 different ways. Kevin, why did you do that thing? To me, that is 1/4 question and 3/4 accusation. Imagine I asked essentially the same question and said, Kevin, how did we get to that result? I'm asking the same thing, but one of them triggers resistance and defensiveness, and the other one comes from an inquisitive mind. I'll give you another example. Sequencing. So imagine you're a lawyer, and there is someone on the stand, and you ask them, where were you that morning? What did you see when the crime was in progress? What did you report to the police? It's done in this logical order. The human mind is good at answering those questions in that order. You know what the other lawyer does? He throws questions from all over the place. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? He's trying to throw you off. If you want to throw somebody off, ask questions in an unsequenced, unstructured way. It's very hard for the human mind to kind of keep up and categorize all those answers. I'll give you another example. This is a picture from me going to see The Wizard of Oz in Las Vegas at the Sphere, which, by the way, the next time you're in Las Vegas, go see that show. That is a super awesome show, awesome production value. Imagine for a moment I asked you a few questions about that movie and just said, who is Oz? Why does Dorothy have ruby red slippers? And who are those flying monkeys? And your mind would be like, I don't know, what were those questions again? How did that go? Instead, imagine I asked you, why is Dorothy distressed? Why is she in the land of Oz? Who are the characters she meets along the way? And how can Oz get her home? Your mind is able to take these things in because they're put in this sequential order. It's easier for the people that are answering those questions to really process those things. So let's flip this coin for a moment, and let's talk about the things that lead us to asking the wrong questions. I'm going to start with that word, ego. And it's the opposite of what we talked about earlier, humility and curiosity. And to me, this isn't a smart, dumb thing. Matter of fact, the example that we'll use is Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs' brilliance is undeniable. He is a co-founder at Apple, and he's done all the things. I won't rehash that. But you know what? In his 40s, he was diagnosed with a cancerous tumor on his pancreas. And the doctor said, you need to have that taken out immediately. And in this life of thinking differently and being this contrarian and being right so often, by the way, there was this sense of ego that got built into him. He believed what he thought in his mind more than the doctors. He stopped asking the good questions. He stopped asking the hard questions. He said, you know what? I'm going to let it go. I'm going to change my diet and do some alternative therapies. Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56, well before the time that he should have. And I think it was not asking those hard questions and that ego that was the reason for that to happen. You know, this isn't about maybe why you're asking the wrong questions, but more about quality and quantity. So I'm a big Malcolm Gladwell fan. He wrote this book called Blink a little while ago. And one of the examples in the book that he gives is of Cook County Hospital. It's a hospital in Chicago. And they are not dealing with heart attack patients very well. So the new administrator comes to the hospital and says, we have to solve this thing because we are unnecessarily hospitalizing people that are not having heart attacks and sometimes sending people with heart attacks home. We have to change this. So he looks at the procedures that they're doing to take in these folks. And he sees that the standard operating procedure for taking somebody in that's having a heart attack is that a doctor or a nurse comes out and asks that patient 35 questions, and then the gut level feel of that nurse or doctor then leads them to make this decision as to whether to hospitalize them or just treat them and send them home. And the administrator said, we have to change this because our healthcare outcomes aren't that good. So what do? They go from 35 questions to 4. 4 questions. And the answers to those 4 questions entirely determine whether that person will get hospitalized or sent home. Because they found that they're collecting too much data. There's a point in time when you literally collect too much data and too much time goes by and it negatively affects your ability to make a good, timely decision. They had better outcomes asking less questions, but more important questions. Who's seen this movie? This movie is creepy AF. So it is 2001, A Space Odyssey. Came out in 1968. It's, the director was Stanley Kubrick. And it is essentially the biggest part of the movie is about a group of scientists and astronauts that are on an undetermined mission in space. And there are 5 of them. And the AI on board is named HAL 9000. Now, at some point, HAL 9000 thinks that the astronauts and scientists are going to intentionally foil the mission. So HAL 9000 kills 4 of the 5 humans. The 5th one is Dave. That's Dave. He's out on a spacewalk, and HAL 9000 locks him out. He wants to kill the 5th human. So Dave, when figuring out that the doors are locked, starts talking to Hal and says, open the pod bay doors, Hal. Hal says, I'm not going to do that. He asks him once or twice more, and he says no. And at that moment in time, Dave has to figure out what route he's going. What questions is he asking? Is he going to continue to go down this road of asking Hal questions, or is he going to ask himself and of the situation different questions? He goes down the second road. And he gets back into that spaceship, and the first thing he does is disable Hal. Probably a pretty good choice. If he spends that time in space asking more questions of Hal, he is going to die in space. He will be the fifth one to go. But there's a certain point in time when this line of questioning isn't going to be fruitful, and it's time to change lanes. And that's what he did. And I think we can all learn a little bit from Dave about the value of asking the right questions. So I'm going to leave with this. We're in this world where everyone asserts their hot takes and their opinions and their answers. And I think the world will be better off with better questions. I think better questions will make you a better boss. I think better questions will make you a better person. I think better questions, well, they might just take you to the moon. Thank you so much, everybody.